Hi. You know, most of this car is, well, not most of it, partially stripped. There's a lot of things missing. A lot of things missing or already removed. There's a lot of rot going on, but that's okay. One reason I bought this car is so that we could make an example of it on this channel. This being the heaviest of the situation. I mean, you know, it holds, but it ain't no good. Especially that. We've never really had a good, honest look at this car. It's either been in the dark or when we first got it, and I've kind of stayed away from it because we're concentrating on that van. So what's next? My issue was the glass was busted. It was unsavable, but that gives you a good gasket typically. Now if the gasket looks like it's torched and split and cracked and all that, but your glass is good and it's not all delaminating white around the edges, then I would suggest just cutting through here and down the side. You can lift this part of the gasket out and then the glass will just push out if you push out evenly. But this situation, we had to save the gasket and try to get any of the remnants of glass out of the channel where it was busting. And then make sure you clean all the glass up with like a shop vac or whatever. And I suggest doing it when you don't have the interior in there like this one. You have no seats, no carpet, nothing to hold that glass and end up biting you later. So we'll probably try to take the rear glass out, and that's going to be a little bit of a task because the trim along the bottom on the rear glass has these screws. I tried popping them loose last night, but they're a no-go. So but I'll give them one more try, put a little impact on them and try to get them out. That way I don't have to drill them out of the holes that they're going to be in. But this trim screws in, and then this trim slips into a pocket that is kind of formed in the ends of them, and then this part is just like the front where you unclip it from the clips around the windshield frame. So that'll be next. Alright, so I was able to take the screwdriver, kind of pound the end of it a little bit, just enough to kind of get some movement out of it, and then force that screwdriver in there and get a good one, and you should be able to work it out. So I got two of them out, this one and this one. So wish me luck on getting the rest of that. Hopefully I won't have to drill any of them. I think mainly what it does is it kind of shakes the screw and the threads and repositions it a little bit and breaks that bond that the rust has made. That'll probably give me trouble because it's also, the screw is has rotted out a little bit. It's a little rusted, and the Phillips part of it is not that good. So we'll just move on and get what we can out. Sweat bees are out everywhere today, boys. try to go back to this one, and there's the last one on the end. There we go. There we go. Come on out. So now it should just jiggle loose. Sometimes there's a little adhesive. This is where it pivots on here, so be careful there. Don't just rip it out. You want to push it downward. And you can see all the crap that's accumulated in there and caused our screws to rust the way they did. But this is stainless here, so. This is in pretty good shape. The front had a lot of push marks, little shallow areas. I took it off a little more rough because I'm not going to make the final team, but got some more back there, so I might use. Now the little clips, they hang on this inside edge here towards the body, okay? And this trim, it lips like this. There's a lip here and there's a lip there. Well, that trim clip is hanging in there like that. So if you don't extend this too much, it does have quite a bit of spring to it, but if you don't extend it too much, what you can do is take the edge of this, and where that little finger is back in here, the clip, you can pull the finger of that clip off, and then it'll pop free. It helps to know where the clips are. Usually there's a couple, one here and one about there. This one here, there we go. See the clip, here it is right here. And this edge here, top of my blade, is what hangs on the inside of the lip of this, okay? This one's up here is the second one. It's free right there, that one. And sometimes when you get this much and it's kind of hinging, a lot of cases, if it's not too rusted and scaly, you should be able to pull them out like that, okay? This heavier lip here, you can see where it kind of bending a little bit. We can push that back down. That's what the clip gets its paw on, its little finger, and that's what holds it down. Now this one's already off for some reason. I wonder if I can slide it. Just like that. That worked to our advantage. And it's always best to really just get new clips unless yours are pristine. Usually they're like a charcoal gray color if they're fresh. These have paint all over them. That tends to hurt. They'll rust. They'll snap from the rust and the age. Yeah, so we should be ready to do the glass now, get the gasket. The problem with these is usually the glass is intact and usually the gasket is intact. So professionals can really pop them out easy and save both. If I have to sacrifice one on this, it'll probably be the gasket. I have an extra one of those. This one also has the rope seal around it. So we need to pull that out, and it'll give us a good bit more advantage of getting the glass out. Last I remember about these, the rope seal goes all the way around. Yes. Whereas on the windshield, you noticed I picked it out of the corner, the lower corner, and went around, and in the bottom was kind of a self-compression thing. So this is where the two ends meet. Just pull it up, get a hold on it, and you can pull it out. Now if it's any case like the van, not so good because this became very, very dry rotted and it broke into probably 1,000 little pieces all the way around. Now that one snapped in the corner, so that doesn't necessarily make the rope seal bad as long as it's all still flexible. but they're cheap enough, you can just buy a new one. I'm going to use my windshield tool, which is made of fiberglass. You can get these about anywhere. eBay, you can buy them in packs. This is an old PPG one, and it saves you trouble from using like a metal one, chipping your glass or anything. So I'm going to use that, see if I can maybe get under here, break this seal a little bit, and then try to pop it all out without tearing anything up. Sometimes you'll hear the glass kind of move or separate when you're doing this, and that's good because it's the seal breaking. It doesn't always mean you're going to be able to pop it out, but it might be showing it's trying to help you. Okay, so that's all the easy stuff. The hard part's actually getting it out. Now the rope seal, what it does is it creates a push. It pushes this seal over onto the glass. We'll see right now it's fairly flexible, but it still needs to be flexible enough, preferably warm weather like we have today. It's really humid out today, and that would help with some pushing the glass out. Now there would be a seal like we did here. We just broke this seal on the inside, and if I can get in there and try to help aid that, then it'll give us even more advantage, but it doesn't guarantee it. All right, so I noticed I went to drive this in there so I can get a little bit of a pressure on it, and it pushed it out here, which it actually broke it. For that to break that had to have been kind of brittle anyways. So it makes it easy, but it kind of sucks because you're going to lose a gasket. Like I said, it's easy because all we got to do is just slice this out. Glass will come out, we can just dispose of the seal. So you can even go up through here, cut it that way. You might feel more comfortable doing it that way. It's pretty brittle actually, for it to just snap like that there. There's no big loss on the gasket. You'll have a little bit holding it from the inside, but it should pop right out. Put even pressure on it. Out it comes. So after this out, will mean everything that's left wrapped around the inside. Get our quarter glass out. Next. Okay, now your quarter glass, it's not too difficult to take out if you've never taken them out before. You'll have a bit of the weather strip here. You got two clips holding it in, and that's these right here. They're just push pins. Unclip them, and then you have two screws. This is all old, so we'll just leave it out. Okay, this screw looks like it might be roached. The screw above it might cooperate with us a little bit. You also have the same thing up here. You have 1, 2. So you have 2 up here, 2 down here. On the inside, you've got this clip right here. You want to save that, and you'll have a screw right there, okay? Now, I'm going to work on these a little bit. 5 screws all together, and this glass should just kind of pop out. Same thing with the other side. Okay, so on both sides, the top screws, the 2 screws on each side, came out really easy. The top of the 2 bottom screws came out relatively easy. This screw on both sides, I had to apply heat to the head of the screw, and then continuous hits with the screwdriver mounted on in there, that sort of thing. Finally, that one just rolled right out. Same thing with that one. The bottom screw, the only screw really holding anything in here now, other than whatever's left of the seal holding it, is rotted. The head's rotted. That one's really rotted. So we have to get, I'm going to take a thin cutting wheel. I'm just going to knock this head off. We'll have to punch the rest of the screw out of that. Come on, there we go. And that's actually the first time I've ever had this piece disconnect from that. Alright, so you might be asking what's next. I mean, you can go any direction you want. Take the doors off, take the dash out. Let's just take the doors off. Oh, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can either take the hinges off with the doors, meaning where you unbolt it from the actual body, the cowl area here, or you can just take the doors loose and you deal with the hinges. Since it's all going to have to come apart anyways, I'll just take the doors loose from the hinges and we'll take the hinges off. You know. My suggestion, if you've never taken doors off before, they're not as heavy as some, but they are still heavy with glass and door panel, all the hardware. So don't take these off first. You can loosen them just like I did, but don't take them off first. Get them all loose, and then take the bottom one off first. That way, the weight will still be hanging on this side, and you can manage it a lot better. You always have the 3 here, the 2 up there. I'll pretty much take these bottom 3 out. So we're completely disconnected down here. Next thing I'll do, I'll take the very, very, very top one out. It's good to have a buddy help you if he's around, somebody. Sometimes you can put a jack under it, kind of firm it up. It's kind of putting some pressure against it, not a lot. So now there's literally only one bolt, and it's that one, holding it in place. And this one you start seeing the door tip away, which is fine. That'll be fine. And by this time I decided to opt for the jack. Put it outward of center. Get about like that. And remember, it's going to teeter once it comes loose. See, that gave it a little bit of wobble here. Another one of these freaking things. So if the bolt's coming out good, that means it's not in a bind. Let it come out. We're completely disconnected. Grab it wherever you can. Now remember, it's still got the glass in it. You can do it without the glass, it'll be a little bit lighter. I'm gonna grab it by the door handle since it's still on it. There you go. And so now the door is off the driver's side. So you just go to the passenger side, rinse, wash, and repeat. Well, both doors are off. Yeah. Put the bolts back in the end of the door so we don't lose them. I'm gonna say we'll go ahead and do this dash next. So with the windshield and the gasket out, the gasket that covers up to this ridge right here, you'll have these screws. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got 5 up here on top, and you've got 1 here and 1 symmetrical to it, mirror image on that side. One thing you want to do first is take stuff like this loose. This is your old door jamb switches. There's the wiring that clips into the back of it. We'll run up into the dash harness. You'll open the hood and help get the little fingers for the primary wiring bulkhead, which right there, I've already got it disconnected. Here, these are the little fingers on each side. There's 4 of them. That'll pop that back through. And stuff like this for your e-brake and brake switch, stuff like that. And make sure you disconnect it here from your little finger clips. Make sure that's all free. And this is part of the wiring that goes back to the other door switch. Okay. You can look up here if you have your cluster out, which I happen to not even have had one when I got it. And I think it's like a seat belt switch there. Disconnect that. And just look around, you'll see some stuff. This green wiring here will remain because it just goes into the switch on the heater and into the bulkhead. Let's see. I'll have to figure that out. This is for your e-brake. It tells you when the light comes on it. This will have to be disconnected. This is already disconnected. And just look for everything. And once you unbolt it, you can kind of lay it down and you'll see everything else is still connected. One of them would be not wires, but the actual cables for your heater switch. It'll go into the box over there. You might have to unloop those or unclip them. But and as far as this, let's see, there is a nut here for the e-brake assembly. You can disconnect that. This will drop down and you'll have it disconnected. And if I think of anything else, I will tell you. You may even know of a few things I'm missing, so let's get to it. Thing out here. One thing I forgot, which was obvious in my sight, was the dimmer switch. The wiring from the dash extends down to that. So if I get the right bit on here, I will take it off. Alright, so with the dash out, I just moved somewhere else, and that package tray I completely forgot about. Just take it out. It just clicks into place.
Okay, we want to get these heater box assembly out. They're relatively small compared to the air conditioning. The air conditioning will come over to here, and it usually takes up a bit more space. Depending on the model, a lot of them will have studs that protrude through the wall, similar to the way these plastic studs do. These are for the insulation. You got one here, here, and so on. But you'll have studs that come through a couple places. You undo those, and you might even have a strap that kind of extends down from up here, and that'll hold your air conditioning box. Well, being it's just a heater box on this one, you take these 4 nuts off here that are encircling this, and I shook the box loose. The trim ring here will come off. You can see the original green, and then it wiggles around. Now this one broke on me. It had this clip, this hanger. Okay, see that? See that? Somewhere about like that. And all that is up in there, so I'll have to repair that. But keep an eye on that if you take one out, because it looked like it had already been sucked in a little bit, so some kind of situation there. Okay, most people don't know about how the wipers attach if they've never been into them before, and they're pretty simple. You got 2 nuts here. They're 1/2-inch socket that'll fit over them. Here, that slipped up there. That will come out. Same exact thing there. And then your leg back here goes to the actual motor. And it's got a little arm on it with a squared off section, which slips up over that stud, and then it'll have a nut of its own holding it on. So when people talk about replacing your wiper seals, there's 2 kinds here. This is the big fat foam donut right here. It looks like it's seen better days. That'll press up against the actual cowl out here that you see this part protruding through, and this is where your wiper index is on there. Okay, so that'll be directly under. That'll get a seal. Not so important in the ways of leakage, like inside the cabin of the car, because anything that goes through there will be inside the cowl, and it should drain off to the sides. Okay, now the one that's really necessary for sealage is this one here. This is your base gasket, and you can see right here it goes up against the base, which goes up against here. Now this is your cowl again. If you have it sealed here, then you can't get water coming through, so you have to have these nice and fresh, and they usually have a little bit of a tack you can put around it. And yeah, so that'll in both places, so here and here. If you ever have it leak here, I think it did on this one because the fuse box is completely rotted apart, and it, like the way the connections are, they've rotted away, and the bottom of the dash is full of a bunch of rust. So I think this one leaked, and everything just drips off the edge here. So this is one of your main primary points on an A-body Duster that you will have leaking. Other than that, it'll be the windshield itself having a bad seal, and the water kind of filling up here and over the edge, and then dropping over the top of this, possibly down here on the edges. So that's what it looks like there. Plus all your firewall seals, they need to be reconditioned after 50 years. So that's what I can tell you about that. So maybe you can tell me something. So I do have to remove some of this knick-knack stuff in here. A couple of those rear seat belts. Some of the little clips, you know, just knick-knack, you know. But I would like to go ahead and get this engine and transmission out. Now those that don't know, this is a 318. This has a slant 6 K-frame, and they put the V8 in it, and if you notice, it is in there crooked. It is also a little less obvious, but it's in there a little bit of an angle. And that's because on these pre-1973, so 72 and back, K-frames, this mount was adaptable for the V8. And we also have a bad mount here. It's completely broken through, so that's what's going on there. But this mount works for a V8. Over here, it doesn't. It's too far that way. The V8 K-frame came over, so that's why it's leaning. This is trying to compensate. It's leaning over. Probably it's in there. It's too far this way. So then where it mounts up to the transmission mount back there, it's just in there. It just needs to come out. We need to redo it, and just everything right. I don't even know if this motor's any good, but we obviously have some nice parts off of it. This thing's frozen. This little Holly, you know, half, whatever they call it, and obviously pulleys. That's always good to have. This came out of a van. It's like a 78 van motor and transmission, so it's got a 727. That's cool. That's why you have this long tube. With the hood on a van like mine, actually the same model van really, it would have been accessible from there. So I'd like to get all this out, and we'll tuck it away, figure it out later. Transmission's good to have, even if it needs a rebuild. They usually do. Cool thing is I might be able to access some of this without getting under it. All right, you saw the transmission cross member come loose. There was supposed to be 4 bolts, but that one I only had 2. But just remember, 4 bolts, and then you got the 2 underneath for the actual mount. I just went ahead and disconnected all of it because it gives you more chance of getting it loose quicker. This is a rubber biscuit mount, okay? Now we showed you this a minute ago, but if these fail, then your motor will actually disconnect from this. This is why the 73 and up, they went to what they called a spool mount, and it had like a washer with a bolt that went through it. And if it did happen to fail, when your engine would torque from, you know, stepping on the gas, it would lift up, and the washer would hold it into place. So it would still do it, but it wouldn't like become disastrous because your throttle cable and all that could get stuck. So if you're new to it, that's why. That's what it's all for. Now this side, there was a big bolt or a nut here on this stud, so this should be ready to pull out for the most part. I mean, I probably have to disconnect something here, but we'll lower this thing back down. I put it up on jack stands. Lower it back down and see if we can wriggle it out of there. Started to pull it up out of here, and it has some pretty good length of exhaust pipes still attached to the manifold, and I figure I'll probably have to cut that side over there. But I noticed if you start to come up this side, the pipe where it goes down will clear the torsion bar. It'll come this way and it'll clear that side, but what it hits is the master cylinder when it does. So I'm just going to at least loosen up and tie it over here, and we might be able to get it up without having to cut everything up. All right, so with the master cylinder kind of moved over to the side, I pulled it all the way out with a rod. The push rod that mounts to the brake pedal is all the way out. Pushed it over. We're going to replace the brake lines anyway, since these look like they're roached. And one thing I had to do was take the crank pulley off. I forgot when you're doing this whole thing, you need that clearance without getting too big of an angle. Tilt more, you want to put it over top the engine if you have the transmission strapped to it. Then the balance will be off a little bit. Try again. Pretty good lean there. Now the funny thing is, I thought the transmission was empty of fluid because when I got it, when we loaded it on the trailer, it didn't leak anything out. But when I tilted it back like this, it started pouring out. So we got kitty litter and a pan back there now. Make sure you stay clear. Don't put your hand in underneath any of this, or you'll be in trouble if it snaps. And some things will free as you go. Just keep an eye on everything. Cables, lines. Pretty clear over here. We might have something on the other side, like the speedometer cable. I think it snapped though. Yeah, it's actually completely disconnected, so it shouldn't be hanging on anything. Transmission lines. Let's see what we do. Of course, when you're putting it in, hopefully you'll have a nice paint job on everything, and you want to be a little more careful with it. They will come up pretty high. See that? I'm getting a lot of clearance there. I have about another foot before I'll actually hit the garage. Once you get that tail shaft free of the firewall here, it should be pretty good. Try not to let it joust into it or anything too hard. Go. Alright, so now we're going to worry about the front suspension here. And one of the big problem areas on these, it always sucks to take off, is these pivot bushings, the bolts that go through for the alignment. It also holds the upper control arm on. You got two on this side and two on the other side. They usually freeze up. And this side was pretty good. I actually had an aftermarket bolt on this side, which was a different size, so it's good to get out of there. Don't know if there's something different about that. On the other side, we had a bolt head that was all gummed up, so I had to really kind of force it out, use a lot of heat on it. So I got all the bolts out, so you're going to see us drop this part, and we're going to take the K-frame loose. The shocks are already loose from the body, so hopefully we can just drop it out, get it out of the way, and we'll go to the next part. Alright, so since the shocks are disconnected from the body, and it leaves us the K-frame bolts themselves, there's 4 of them. They're about 1 inch and I believe a 1/16 socket that'll fit on there. We have most of the bolts kind of knocked out, but not completely, because we have tension on the suspension, and that tension is provided by the spring. Now, if you're not familiar with a lot of these 60s and 70s Mopars, they have a torsion bar spring on each side. Here into the body, here into the body, and that's a cross member. That's a torsion bar cross member. Goes right underneath your legs if you're in the front seat, okay? These have to be backed off and loose in order to get this thing out safely. Same thing right here, it's just a reverse image, okay? When you tighten that up, there's a finger that's a part of this assembly right here, and here is the finger up in here. Well, when I tighten this bolt down here, it pushes up on that, okay? When you do that, it creates a push off of the ground, and it puts those in a twist, and that's your suspension, that's your spring right there, okay? So you have to have these completely loose, and usually if they're done right, the head will be exposed out of the bottom part of this control arm. Usually if the head is flush right here with up in here, it's in there correctly and it should be tight, and there should be suspension of the front, okay? So since they're both loose, we can now go ahead and proceed to take these bolts out. This one slipped right out, so I went with it. This one, I just kind of let it hang there. So it should have the tension off of it. And once those are out, this whole thing should fold out. So you want to be careful. If there's any weight to it there, if you're sitting next to it, you're not prepared, this will slide away, and don't get your finger jammed or anything there. Same thing on this side. Again, just a mirror image. Drop it out, this thing will fall away, and it will leave these. Now, typically on the torsion bars themselves, this is the top view of it. There's that finger that the bolt pushes up on. They make a tool you can clamp on here and hit the side of the tool with a hammer, and you can knock it out towards the back. They have clips on the back side in the cross member, okay? These are still intact. It's part of it's like a big C-clip wraps in there. You pull those out, you can knock them out the back typically. Sometimes the rust will fight you from here. Usually those aren't bad, they're greased on a balloon seal. But these might fight you, so I'm gonna spray some oil on these, or some penetrating oil, and try to get them at least a little bit loose. That way when we knock everything off here, it should just rattle loose and we can throw them out the back, okay? So. All right, here's one of the torsion bar cross member clips right here. You can just grab with some pliers like that, squeeze, okay? Taking that side out, you can see where the two stubs are. Not a lot of force holding them in. It's just in a groove there inside that hex pattern that allows it to hold in case the bar happens to want to crawl out, which once they get tension on them, if they're far enough in there, they won't. But it also ensures that when you go to put the tension on there, the bar's all the way in, and this is just one of the precautions. You make sure you put that in. Together. There's your K-frame bolts. I just took this one out. This one's a few threads in. That's what they should look like. I don't really think it's the best idea to just go stick any old bolt in there. It's that thread. But they're kind of a special bolt, and I think you can buy them new. But there are usually enough of the old ones out there that are in really good shape. So that's what they should look like. Okay, so initially these torsion bars were stuck. I couldn't get them worked out of the back. So I was able to put a block on the edge of this control arm socket and bump it forward, and was able to push it away from the bar. The other side's a little different situation. It's still stuck there, but it's coming out of the back of the cross member spline. So you see these, once you give them a smack here with a block of wood, that should pop out the back. And remember, it's got to have those clips removed, or else it ain't going anywhere. And then this side here is pulling out. So at the moment, the K-frame is forward about 2 inches from where it was, or where it should mount. So let's see whether we can get the rest of it out here, whether it take this bar or not. So this driver's side torsion bar is out of the socket from the cross member. It's actually free, but it's just setting on the tires being all crooked. And as you can see, it comes out like that. There's the torsion bar. I put a little heat on it to pop it out. And there's that. Now I'm not going to use these torsion bars again, so if you have to beat them out or whatever, if you're not going to use them, then you can do that. But if you're going to use them again, or sell them to somebody, or give them to somebody for use, don't be beating on them, because if they get a little notch in them, and then that twist as they get reinstalled, it will cause a stress on that notch, and that's where they will ultimately break. If you've ever heard one of these go off, it sounds like a shotgun blast. And also, if you're going down the road, it could be dangerous because the whole side drops. So just keep that. Okay, let's talk about this little assembly first before we discard most of it or put it away. We put a little bit of heat on this torsion bar, and after that wouldn't come out even then, so I soaked it with some penetrating oil, and I'll try to just knock that out so we can have a better space situation for where we put this. Now, if you're ever wondering on these no disc brake front ends from an A-body with no sway bar tabs on the control arms down here, and the sway bar is completely lacking, let's talk about this. What to save? There are parts of this that I think that should be saved. One of them, if it's in good shape, it ain't all busted up or bent or cracked in a bunch of places, is the K-frame. Now this K-frame is a slant 6 piece. We talked about it, I believe, on the last video, or maybe earlier in this one. I cannot remember at this point. But this mount here, which is the driver's side, is adaptable for a slant 6 or the V8. This one here, although it looks similar, it is not. The slant 6, I believe, comes over too far towards the frame rail. There's a smaller gap between where the frame rail would be here and this piece. So I think it needs to come over another inch or so. They can be modified, and if you're good with a welder and you can get a pattern off of one, or one that's maybe bent over here and you can piece them together, that's what you can do. Or you can just cut these off completely and put the spool style mounts, which are the 73 plus, and they're like two stands that have curved tops on them. I'm just going to save this for now. If I can find a 73 and up K-member, I will just prefer to use that. Okay, so that's my opinion on that, and you could, depending on your situation, do the same. Now our strut rods here, if they're not bent, I would just save them. Put them in your parts bins. There's always somebody that needs them, or you might need them if you bend one. Okay, so there's that one there, and you got the one over there. Beyond that, really, in my opinion, the only thing worth saving in this day and time is the control arms. They are universal between these brakes or the disc brakes. They fit the same. One advantage to these is they are the same ones that they use for the sway bar mount cars. You just actually have to put the sway bar tab on it. I do have a pattern that you can make one. It looks like a big long bird with wings on it, and you fold it over and it comes up above this point here, this plane, and you can weld it in, and then you'll have basically factory style sway bar control arms. So they're always good to have, and if you want, you can brace the underside like a lot of guys do, especially if they're doing some road racing, anything like that. So I wouldn't throw those away because they actually are a good core. Let's just say they're not completely built for most modern applications. These, which are the tie rods, save those. Of course, you can throw away the old tie rod ends. In this case, your pitman arm for the steering box, it's got the joint on it. It's probably discarded, or I would discard it. If it has the non-joint on it, where it doesn't have a swivel ball in it or a ball joint of any sort, then I would save it. Pitman arm, or the, I'm sorry, yeah, the pitman arm. No, idler arm, my bad. Idler arm is your passenger side. It has the bushings in it here. It's pretty much a wear item. And obviously your other tie rod, I would save that. The center link, I would save that. A lot of times they interchange. The earlier ones, they are straight. and they don't have this dip. And the early ones that are straight usually are for slant 6 vehicles. And this is kind of a universal drag link, center link, whatever you want to call it. So it's worth saving those. The spindles there on these are so small, they're actually kind of a liability nowadays, seeing as they're this old. And a lot of the type of driving a lot of us like to do, if you wanted to be kind of up to snuff with anything new, they're really not worth saving. They only fit for the drum brakes anyways, and these drum brakes are like probably 9 inches. Not real adequate for good stop and go type of driving. So pretty much from this joint out, you can throw it all away. These have a small ball joint, very, very small. Not worth the trouble. Unless you're just, you're just granny driving it, then it's okay. It's, everything has a purpose. But most cases, most guys that are gonna follow this, or younger guys, they want to upgrade, have a V8, have it sustainability among other newer vehicles. And that's just what I think. Obviously the shocks are junk. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at on that. And we talked about the torsion bars earlier, so hopefully that helps. Now when it comes to this, obviously there's nothing in here now. These are very light when they're at this stage, so please be careful with them if you have them on jack stands. I had to reposition these due to that. They like to kind of fluctuate, so I put them on here back towards the T section on the cross member for the torsion bars and your frontward subframe, that the unibody. Okay, I put that one at a little bit of an angle. It gives a little bit more bite, and this one is a slight angle, and it's on here pretty good. You always want to test it. If you have to, put some old wheels or tires under here like you would if you're jacking it up. That way if it does fall, it's going to have a cushion. It's not going to come down in your leg or anything. So that's just a little bit of safety, okay? Because I swear, 2 guys could wheelbarrow this thing around. And me, I'm about 160 pounds, 6'1", and I'll show you, they can be lifted up really easy at this point. So again, just be safe with them. I probably will put some old wheels with tires on them underneath there, just in case something gets kicked off, because it's very light, but it's also just heavy enough to cause you some damage. So what we really need to do next on this car is just eliminate what left of the minutia in it. Let's get these seat belts out. Let's get this e-brake assembly out. There's some swivels up here, some keyways, a spring. Take that out. There's a couple nuts holding this heater box. Well, it's not really the heater box, it's a fresh air vent. We'll take the rest of this stuff off, which is like the buzzer, and I think there's a horn relay, one of those. And there's some insulation up in there. That side's pretty well stripped except for the hinges. And I'm just gonna go ahead on the brake lines, since they are pretty rotted up in here. I'm just gonna cut everything out, okay? We'll just have to get new. We're gonna have to change the proportioning valve to a disc brake version anyways. This one won't work. I will keep this proportioning valve just as a parts storage thing. I like to do that just in case somebody needs it for something, okay? So this will all just cut. I will take it out. We'll keep this for a core. Make sure you save your rod here. You don't throw that away, because that will have to get used on the next one, okay? Same thing with the bolt on it. But the rest of these lines, we'll fold these down, take these out, cut it free. This is not factory. This is actually a much larger fuel line somebody put in here. We'll take it out. We'll take these splash shields out, 2 bolts each. The hood hinges, they have these spring clips. If you work them off evenly with a couple of screwdrivers, one on each side, one over here and one over here, and try to preserve them, you won't have to buy new ones. Sometimes they'll snap if you're too aggressive with them. Sometimes they'll snap anyways, but you have one here, you have one here, okay? Do not try to take any of this off, but if you get that one off and that one off on each side, these things will just slide off, okay? Keep the clips with them, tape them to them, wire them to them until you get to fixing them later. Again, the hinges, go ahead and take this off, because they wear. You can get a new one or rebuild this one, however you want to do it, okay? Other than that, there's the rest of our brake lines that are rotted. You can take these bushings off. There's a nut underneath here, just a single nut, and you can take these off. I would discard them because they're dry rotted and you can buy new ones really cheap. Also, notice this dirt. This is one reason I had the car sitting in the shed back there for the past year, because of the moisture. You're going to get a little bit of moisture just being outside, but I didn't want it to accelerate any possibility of rust on this frame rail of it getting inside here. The last few days, no big deal, because we're working on it, we're cleaning it all out. So we want to get all this out. If you have to power wash it all out. Make sure you get it out really good, because it's caked in there. My very first Duster was rotted from here with this bracket and this bracket all the way over to here. And being new, being like 15 years old, I didn't know anything until I got home and I realized the suspension was attached to it. And that was my first car, and it ended up going to the junker. But I learned a lot off of just everything else in the car. I learned not to buy one with massive frame rot at that time. Now it's not too big of a deal. This here, we'll have to get all this out. This is all caked in there. Same thing up here. We'll get all that out. Usually, I'd say you can get as much of it out as you can by hand or with some old chisels or something, whatever, and then power wash the rest of it out really good. Get it down to the metal. See here, this is kind of what it should look like. There's a cap in here. It goes down about 1.25 inches from the top. It should look like that when you get all this cleaned out. From here, 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 and there. Alright, so I'm about ready to cut some of these brake lines out. One reason I'm doing that is a lot of them are rotted. I don't want to take the time to try to heat up or penetrate oil on all the little joints and try to get them loose. So you just cut them in ways that you can get it out, okay? Now, one thing you could do, if you want to bend your own lines, which I prefer to do as opposed to buying pre-bent lines for a premium cost, why not just save the shapes as best you can, and then when you buy new line, shape it to the old ones, okay? So here's what I would prefer to do in this situation. So for starters, I showed you this earlier. I've unclipped everything here, over there, right here, here, and there, okay? Now each side, or I should say this side, wraps under the frame rail and hooks up here. Well, this is rotted. The clip won't come on. I have to probably break the clip and slide it out so that the whole thing will come loose. This is pretty much welded itself rust-wise to here, okay? So I know that this is gonna hook around and curve. So what I could do is where it goes into the proportioning block, I can cut it right there. I'll have my shape as it goes around the firewall, goes under, and then cut it right here on the flare. That way 99% of this will come out intact, and in the meantime I can just hang it up on the wall somewhere in the garage safe, label it as the firewall passenger side front brake line, okay? And then when you go to get new line, you just use this as a template, okay? Because this is a factory piece, so that way you can mimic it perfectly and you'll be in good shape. As far as these here, they're not too big a deal because they're relatively short, but if you want, you can just cut them, same deal, cut them here, and if you can get them loose off of there, you'll be in good shape. And then they will roughly, even though I bent this over, will roughly be in the right position. These look like they have been replaced, so I'm not too concerned about these. They can be duplicated from most applications. The one going to the rear, we'll cut it off here, unclip it as much as we can as it goes to the back, and it crosses over to the rear axle, and then we'll just clip it there. And that, folks, is how you do it. At least that's how I'm gonna do it. Pick your poison. So you can see here most of the brake lines I've broken off in sections. Here's our firewall piece. This is the length of it. This will be the rear, where it wraps around the rear frame rail. And that goes up to the front through the cross member, and then it would tie into this here, because it goes through the frame rail cross member as well. We also have the e-brake, basic part of the mechanism with the spring. And if you ever get really lost, it's good to have a service manual or just take pictures. I have pictures of all this stuff before disassembly, so that's usually your best bet. Now, we've taken out a couple other things, one of them being the fresh air vent that hung down here, and you'll usually reach up in there carefully and pull out crap, or in this case, mouse nest. This insulation was up on the back of the firewall around to the side here. That's out of the way. Here's where your e-brake cable start, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and go full throttle with this and take this bracketry off here, okay? We're just gonna gut it out completely so that we can do it right and have more room to work. That's what a lot of it is. You'll have an easier palette to work from if you just clear all this out. But if I don't take a picture of this, I have video of it, so you can take video as well. So that's how that goes in. This bracket and that bracket. I can just refer to this video or picture and we'll know how it went. So make sure you're clear when you do it. That'll always help you. So as you can see, I've got the bracket out here. This one fell in below it. The brake pedal does come out. It has a clip that has a nut and a bolt. Fits in the groove there, and ultimately this whole sleeve comes out, and it's got some O-rings on it to keep it nice and firm. And just I've put it back together as an assembly and put it with the other brake stuff, okay? Like that. Since we're going at it, this bracket, which will back up to your master cylinder, it gives it bracing. It also gives your steering column area and your dash bracing. You can go ahead and pop that loose. Again, it'll give us more room to work, and also we can refinish these parts as needed. Most of this stuff was bare metal. That's why it rusts like this. So one thing you could do is, you know, paint it all black or like a cast iron or just gray or whatever you want. I mean, you're not going to see it unless you're looking up under there. It's just whatever you want to do.